So the other thing that Max and I actually talked about when I walked in, that he wants me to be the comedian tonight, and I said, oh, that's actually interesting, because before I decided to become an automotive engineer, I actually considered becoming a comedian. That was at the age of 9, but then when I was 10, I decided automotive engineer is going to be my thing. Believe it or not, right?
You know, they laughed when I said I was going to become a comedian, and now I am one, and nobody's laughing now.
So, well, let's see. It basically turned out that I was good in physics and math and everything, and went to college, engineering school and whatnot, and then started with BMW, as Max told you about, and worked a lot on these vehicle dynamics control systems and so on. And I was very, very excited about those things, keeping a car safe on the road, improving handling qualities. BMW, obviously, that's one of their staples. How great the ultimate driving machine performs, not just in longitudinal direction, but also laterally and vertically. But from there, I moved into innovation management. That's also something that Howard and I discussed a little bit earlier, that I worked for 3 years in innovation management. Actually learned a lot there, that when you have great technology on hands, when you think as an engineer, you know what, there's really something here that works just well and is an amazing technology. It does not necessarily mean that you are done. And I'm sure that many of you can relate to this, but this was really quite a realization for me, that I thought much more like, okay, seems like we need to look at business considerations as well, the whole field of marketing, but also legal aspects. Max mentioned very important step, obviously, in a very specific field here, but absolutely important. But certainly we need to look also a lot at resources and environmental issues and all of these things. And so when I really got exposed to this environment in innovation management, I thought, okay, let's see how we can apply it. And then actually I got with BMW here to Silicon Valley in 2003, and my task was to do technology scouting, meaning looking at non-automotive technology, turn them around and determine if it makes sense to integrate those technologies into the BMW or Mini or Rolls-Royce of the future. And that was in the early 2000s. We looked a lot at, or at least in my field, we looked a lot at smart dust. Not quite sure where smart dust is going. I haven't heard a whole lot about it lately. And then we also talked a lot about nanotechnology. Ooh, do we need to put nanotechnology in a car? And what does that actually mean? I think also a very good example in terms of, well, there's great technology, but what do you do with it? And then a little bit fast forward, had one stint with BMW. That was my last assignment in Michigan, actually, when I worked for BMW, but on this collaboration together with GM and Daimler Chrysler. Some of you might remember this in the mid-late 2000s on the hybrid powertrain in Michigan. So I was on the BMW side with this. And actually living in Michigan, especially in the Detroit area, so I'm sure that quite some of you have been there, maybe some of you are from there. I found this very interesting, and I defined Detroit then at some point as depressingly inspiring. And what I mean by this, the depressing part, I guess, can be easily, unfortunately, relatively easily understood, but also inspiring, like, well, where's all this going? All this going meaning automotive industry, but also the automobile as such. And then I really got somewhat concerned about my own career in the automotive industry. Will I still have a job when I'm in my mid-50s or something? And I then got in touch with the people here at Stanford, and at that time, just what is now the Center for Automotive Research, which is a industry affiliates program, bringing industry and academia together to look at the challenges and hopefully at the solutions for personal mobility of the future. And so I said, well, that sounds like a great task to work on. And so I ended up here, well, here tonight obviously, but with my daytime job obviously at Stanford, We are working with 17 companies, like as a close affiliation. These are 11 car companies. Probably all the car companies that come to your mind, except one, are on that list. And we have 2 insurance companies. That's also very interesting. The insurance companies that might come to mind probably are on that list, who are much more innovative than I had thought in the beginning. Actually, when the insurance companies said, well, we consider maybe teaming up with your Chrome, I thought, sure, take the money, but what are we going to do with them? Like fighting over insurance policies or what? But now, obviously, that we are talking about legal aspects of autonomous vehicles and so on, it certainly makes a lot of sense. And also these things like pay-as-you-go insurance and things like that. And then we have 2 commercial truck companies and 2 tier 1 suppliers. And with these, we are looking at the future of personal mobility. And that's maybe a good starting point for discussion here. So what do we see as, where's the future of personal mobility going? What matters? What might change? So I don't know, what is on your mind? Give me some feedback, because I want to know what your thinking is before I wander off in one direction and say, oh, we knew that already. I don't know.
So I have a little bit of an open-ended question that might have been better to ask when all 3 of you were there at the end, but since you're leaving, I wanted a chance for your brain to take a crack at it. The man-machine interface is a very important area in terms of innovation and breakthroughs, and it seems to me that the machine that human beings have the best relationship with is the car. I think for most of the human race, that is the machine that they actually have the closest relationship. Maybe the iPhone has bumped it up, but...
I was going to say this. There's a close second, and maybe it's just passing. The watch.
So I'm wondering...
Interesting, yeah.
So I'm wondering...
Because we don't typically take our cars with us to bed, but fine.
So
I've seen people with the iPhone in the bed and then with the watch. But
so what sorts of things are the car companies thinking about related the relationship between the person and the machine when you talk about a car that drives itself? Yeah. And since you had some time at BMW, that eye control thing, clearly there are challenges. And how do you make a relationship between a person and a machine? So I bet you have some thoughts about that.
Well, sure. And I mean, it certainly depends highly on the brand values. If you want to be driver-oriented or really more like in your safety cocoon, something, whatever. But these days, certainly what the car companies are heavily working on, I want to say also to some extent afraid of, is what's happening in the field of driver distraction, or to flip this around, attentive driving. Because what was proposed as my understanding, not mandatory guidelines, so voluntary guidelines by NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, what is supposed or expected or deemed to be okay to be used in a car and what is not. The list of the things that are not is actually much longer than the things that are deemed to be okay for usage in the car. So that is one thing, but I think that's a very technical explanation of the thing, and since we wanted to branch out a little bit more, there's a lot going on actually with the identification with the automobile is, and that takes us very quickly away from technology. Like, do people really, and people, I'm talking about probably people who are younger than me and who are maybe in the height of their life within the next 20 years or so, do they want to own a car or do they want access to a car, which is obviously not the same thing. There seems to be an understanding that the automobile as such is not going to go away anytime soon, and also that the freedom aspect of the automobile matters a lot, so that you can say, well, sure, even if you have great public transportation, that I'm also a huge fan of, that doesn't really replace the thing. You have your personal car outside your door, and you can just hop in it, go wherever, whenever, to wherever, I had this already, but with whomever at any point in time. And so the car companies are really working a lot on those things. How can they reinvent the business model, if you will? Because the business model used to be like selling cars. And depending on what brand you're looking at, or there I might say even what continent you're looking on, it's maybe just cranking out the cars like crazy, or really like, you know what, build the greatest car on the planet, or really like something in between, a very great car, but still a ton of them. And so they are somewhat unsure where this is going. If this will continue like this, or that it's changing gradually, maybe fundamentally, and that's just unclear, and therefore you see, so at least my observation, every company at least considering an in-house car sharing model, and quite some of them you obviously see having these car sharing models already in the market. And so there's a lot about this driver-vehicle relationship. But now switching back to technology, where we have actually great research at Stanford going on, Professor Cliff Nass, those of you who might actually know him, researches the relationship between humans and technology. And technology in this case obviously then is the car. Like, the cars are getting smarter and smarter every model year, more and more autonomous, maybe every, I don't know, Brad will answer that question, if it's getting more and more autonomous every month or every decade. Unfortunately, I will not be able to listen to that. But what relationship should there be between human and the car? Should it be like a companionship that the car is allowed to give it advice, like you might want to consider an alternative route? Or like, you know what, I'm just taking on an alternative route. No, I don't want to do this. So, and then it just sounds somewhat funny if we think about it. And in fact, when I met with some of the researchers the first time, just freshly retired from the automotive industry, I thought like, ooh, it's interesting how they're thinking around here. But it makes a lot of sense because we do have these relationships, for instance, with an iPhone. I don't have an iPhone 4S, just the iPhone 4, so I cannot really talk to my phone. But I understand many people do, and just love seeing the iPhone growing up, that not every model year, but every 2 months or something like this, Siri gets better and better. And there's a lot of this in the car as well. That's maybe my, not just 2 cents, maybe it was a quarter.
Do you think people are more aware about the size of their touchscreen of their car and how many cylinders they have than the hood?
So what I found very, very interesting when Tesla showed their Model S at the Menlo Park showroom, was about a year ago. I mean, they showed it already like 2 years ago, I think, but there was just a mock-up. But when they showed the first car, I think it was about a year ago. And it was really open floor, and everyone could sit in the car and touch it. And I sat in this car for a few minutes. I couldn't sit in it that long because people were waiting in line. But mostly they talked about this, what is it, an 8 or 9-inch screen or something like this? 17. It's 17 actually. Oh my god. This is the metric and imperial thing, because I could tell that it's like one A4 paper size, but the inches is still a little bit complicated. 17 inches actually. Thanks, Brad. And
About 50 cents.
and people talk it's about right. Talk much more about this, about the screen in it, and if it was a good pixel resolution or not. And sure, they also talk a little bit about the range and whatnot, but if the menu structure was intuitive or not. And then there was this reporter from Palo Alto Daily or Post or whatever she was with, and asked me like, hey, so what do you think about this car? And I said, well, I think it's a real Silicon Valley car, because I mean, all the electric and hopefully environmentally friendly approach and whatnot. And then the nexus with the media system, and then really this stunning, at least for car standards, a stunning screen in there. And then obviously caters quite a bit to the community around here. But really the people get more and more interested in those things than, I mean, who really cares if a vehicle has still a 4-valve injection, 4-valve combustion engine, or if it's 3 valves. Actually, Citroen did some 3-valve engines for some time. Audi did some 5-valve engines for some time. It's really like, oh, it's a 17-inch screen. So it matters a lot.
The price of a car and the horsepower is still very strong these days.
Yeah, it is.
I'm just wondering, thinking back to my childhood, the car of the future was one that would go in 3 dimensions. You know, it wouldn't just go horizontally, it would also go vertically. And there hasn't seemed to be any progress except the quality of the animation in the movies.
I'm very happy that you're asking this question or mentioning this, because to some extent when we are discussing many of these breakthrough innovations that are supposed to happen within the next 10, 20 years for the car, one could also list the flying car in that field, because it's been talked about a lot. Technically it's possible, it's been proven, and in fact I think like 2 years ago the FAA passed a law, changed regulations, something like this, that I forgot the company name, maybe some of you remember the company name, I think it's on the East Coast. Holland maybe can chime in.
So I work for DARPA, and they have a flying car program going on right now, and there are 6 different flying cars being tested right now. Right now.
That was Terra Fuji you're talking about, isn't it?
Yes, I mean they are definitely in the field. I'm wondering if that's them who basically worked a lot with the FAA and changing the regulations. I think it was Terra Fuji, that's right.
They needed to change the weight requirements in
Yep.
order to fit in both FAA and
Yes, but and
DOT.
that's one thing that legislation or regulation is obviously very, very important. It's not just because you have great technology, there's a great innovation, and there's a great product, but it also shows us how much we would need to change the transportation mode, transportation thinking. Like, because now you do have your wings, you need to flip them around somehow because you want to go downtown with your car and all of these things. And it's also something like requires some sort of different certification for the average driver. And do you feel safe in these things? One example that obviously did not fly, I mean physically it didn't fly, and on the market it also did not fly, when BMW had the C1 little motorcycle. It was actually, I'm not sure if it was shipped here in the United States, but Max knows what I'm talking about, right? So if I'm saying something incorrectly, please put it right. But there was a enclosed motorcycle, no doors, but it was somewhat egg-shaped, and they fought really hard that at least in Europe they didn't require helmets. Typically you need a helmet on a motorcycle, and because it had this rollover cage and everything built in, it didn't require helmets, and you were basically mostly protected from the weather and everything, so that was good. And really the idea was, it was a great solution for the commute, because you only have 2 wheels, you can just zip through, and it's lightweight, it's relatively efficient and economical. But it didn't fly, because it didn't quite fit into the thinking of the consumer. For a motorcycle rider, like a real biker, like my last name almost, it was not a real motorcycle. And for people who were using automobiles or a car, they needed still an additional license, which is definitely a big deal in Europe to get a motorcycle license. And so they didn't get a license just for this thing. And that's very interesting, I find, to see that it is quite a new idea in the field of transportation. Segway might be somewhat similar as well. That people say, well, I don't really get it.